Okay, so we're on chapter 15, and this is the summary. It's listening well in conflict. He starts off by talking about education is the ability to listen to almost anything without losing your temper or self-confidence. And I would say a culture of empathy, or being an empathic way of being, is an ability to listen to almost anything without losing your temper or self-confidence. He starts off by saying in conflict, people stop listening to each other. And then he has a heading, listening across canyons. And most people use us versus them, right or wrong thinking. And he mentions about doing an empathy interview of someone who you disagree with. And then he has another chapter of but another heading, listening in tight places. All I got out of that was being heard is calming. And maybe it would have been good if everybody had done a little bit of an outline. We could have kind of merged them together into this slideshow. And then the third section of the chapter, he says, beyond listening well, start with mutual listening. So this is like in conflict. You listen, we listen to each other if there's a conflict, until we find common ground. So that's those core values or sort of core feelings, desires, or needs. Then from there we find mutually agreeable solutions. And one way to do that is to, once that common ground is established, you ask, what would you like to have happen? What are you willing to do? And what would you like the other to do? So kind of make a request out of the other. And so that was the essence of that chapter. So I guess we can open it to the empathic listening. Who would like to start, and who would you like to speak to? And we'll just start with that.
So I could speak first.
Okay.
And Bob, I haven't heard you in a while, so could I hear from you?
Peter, I'd like to listen to you.
Thank you. So this chapter really made me think of, it made me feel into that, because the way that he kind of keeps repeating that essence of that moment that you realize that you're not listening. He really this whole chapter has this strong request of honoring when we are in that moment that could take away hearing what's actually happening, right? And I'm kind of just appreciating that skill, that like when you're in that moment where you're just on the edge of not being able to connect at all, to be able to pull back and to say, okay, so I'm not going to jump in the canyon. I'm actually going to listen across it. That moment of decision, and just how it comes up so much when we're having difficult conversations.
I hear you saying that in the moment, one can choose to be actively listening and bridging the canyon, or one can not be mindful and be jumping into the canyon and be lost, and the communication is not happening.
Yeah. And just it's making me think of those moments where it's essentially, for me at least, it happens in those moments where I know I'm right. And at the same time, I know I'm right, but there's no way I could be right, without connecting with the other person. So it's that catch-22 that, okay, so yeah, okay, maybe 2 + 2 is 4, but what's going on that this person isn't getting that same answer, and how much my being right doesn't do nothing. It really means nothing in that situation if my goal is to connect with the other person rather than just be right. Just being right isn't enough in most situations. It's that level of connection, that willingness to have people essentially, join me rather than get pushed away by right or wrongness.
So being right, knowing that one's own 2 + 2 = 4 is not enough. it has to be a relationship where one is open to hearing another's version of truth, and let that communication be more important than being right.
That I'm real now. I'm realizing, and you're reflecting it back. That is the to me. I'm realizing that is the only way in order to, invite people to learn what would be the right way, right? If you're stepping into this space where you're educating someone, and they've created a worldview around that intent of 2 + 2 is 3. That this is what makes like great speakers. Like they really passionately, and effectively communicate their version of rightness, and then they're able to connect with people about it. It's not they just say it; they can say it in a way that's connecting. And how much of a risk it is to have someone else like admit that something's going on. I'm even thinking of an interaction I had with someone at my job today, where this person, there's something going on, and just sitting there and listening. And at the end, she just turned to me and says, yeah, there's something going on. Just, I don't want to admit it. It's too scary. But just literally, I took her to a diner, sat down, and just listened to everything she said, reflected it back perfectly every time. And I knew something was wrong. I could have said to this person, something's wrong. But it wouldn't have mattered. She would have just fought it and said, no, forget you. I hate this. I don't want to be involved. But really waiting for her to say, something's wrong, it was just freeing. It really took a weight off my shoulders of the responsibilities I have at my work by really collaborating.
So in this experience today at work, you could have told this person that you sensed that something was wrong, and you didn't, and you reflected back what she was saying, and she came to the conclusion that something was wrong. And so it is more powerful to be empathic than it is to be right.
Yeah.
Because
and actually, I'm realizing, and you're saying it, being right makes being empathic more powerful, at least from my experience. Like having the knowledge only gives you the opportunity to be more compassionate, because you can kind of see it. For me, I could kind of see the direction it was going.
So there is power in compassion and empathy and listening.
And also, I want to just acknowledge the power in knowledge, like the power, like everything kind of mixed together beautifully. Like that feeling I had before of the circle kind of meld, everything spinning. That's how it feels like. The knowledge, the empathy, the everything kind of just is beautifully mixing right now.
So knowledge, empathy, communication, it's mixing in a wonderful unity.
Yeah. All right, I'm complete. I feel heard. Thank you.
Thank you. Bill, would you please listen to me?
Sure, be happy to.
On pages 92 and 93, Miller has 9 questions.
Mm-hmm.
And these 9 questions are a silver mine, a gold mine, a platinum mine, the tremendous potential in the world when we could all just sit and listen to each other, let's talk about these questions. I have a process I'm involved with here in Thousand Oaks, and my first effort at communication was rebuffed, and I'm going to make another effort to say, let's listen to each other about this. And these 9 questions are the essence of what we need to be doing.
Okay. So I sense that you found that this chapter was very meaningful for you, and the 9 questions are also very important, and gave you another strategy to readdress some poor communication that's going on in your personal or public life. Yeah.
So true. Thank you. I feel fully heard.
Okay. All right. Edwin, would you listen?
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Well, I haven't, I've sort of been at odds, so I didn't really, I read it, but I read it a while ago, and I've just had a chance to skim it, so I don't really, have, I didn't refresh my memory as much as I'd like. But I certainly, in my job as a special ed teacher, that's what we did. Conflict resolution was sort of like what we did. And as a matter of fact, I've tried to introduce it, reflective listening, to my school. And I've done a few things, but everybody's into their own thing. And so, but I know how important it is. And essentially that's what we said. Like, for instance, in conflict, when a kid acted out physically, we'd have a meeting every time, and we'd say, okay, what's the communicative intent? And if we could find the communicative intent, then we had a pretty drastic reduction in the violence, because we could really address the issue, and the child felt heard. I've given some examples. There was, for instance, a child who was having a tremendous upset, and it turned out that he hadn't gotten his lunch, or his lunch was, so the issue was then nurturing. And so with all the other, techniques, I was able to I didn't have a lunch, but I was able to get a glass of water and give him the glass of water. And as soon as he drank that glass of water, it was communicated, and the communication itself really calmed him down. And I'll stop there.
Okay, so I think to begin with, you'd read the chapter before. You weren't like totally up on remembering the latest, but you kind of skimmed it. And it is the chapters about conflict, which you have plenty of experience with in your at your school. And the point you were sort of addressing was that if you can understand what the underlying needs are, or the underlying values, or of the person that has the conflict, that's like an important step. And that and you had tried to foster the empathic listening, it sounds like, in your class, but it sounds like it wasn't really well received, because everybody kind of does their own thing. But you did have, when there was a conflict, you'd have the staff would get together and discuss, like, well, what is the real need that this person has that's in conflict? And once you could identify that and sort of address it, then it really started resolving the conflict, and just kind of making, just seeing that kind of relates to what we're talking about here in the book, sort of a personal anecdote, the experience of it.
Right. Just that I didn't use reflective listening as we practice it per se in my classroom. But I did go back after I was retired, and I did do a group or two. So it was like in my classroom, we would use it sometimes. They had to be safe. And so they had to demonstrate. They had that choice, but they had to say, okay, I'm ready to be civil to this person and stuff. And that built trust. Once they could say it and then do it, that built trust. And so we had some nice friendships.
You broke up there right in the middle of it for a little bit. So it was, I was just, the first part I heard was that you did empathic listening in the class, or you didn't teach it, but you did it, or?
Right. What happened is that we used various types of conflict resolution, which would be parallel to this, but not reflective listening. And then I went back about 6 months ago and did some reflective listening. Okay. And I've tried to encourage other counselors to do it, but so far nobody's taken me up on it.
Okay. So you actually did, it wasn't really part of the curriculum, before, but when you went back, you were trying to encourage people to do it, and somehow it just what they weren't really taking it on for some reason.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds like you're maybe a little frustrated with that, or
no. You know, I think it's great in like, you know, but I just feel that this is something you just got to keep on chipping away at. And so it's a long haul. And so you just got to try this, try that.
Mm-hmm.
So
you got to be in it for the long haul and keep trying different things. There's kind of like no easy answer, but you just got to keep chipping away at it. And,
thank you. I feel heard.
okay. I'll speak to Celia if you're
okay.
that's okay.
Yeah.
So hearing Bill's story of the school, I always wonder about schools like that where they do empathy circles with the students. Like, you know, that you could start with dividing the class into small groups and then have them practice empathic listening with each other. And that'd be sort of a regular practice that, and, you know, like every day they have a certain amount of time for doing empathic listening in small groups with each other, sort of a peer-to-peer. I don't know what but that's something I've been imagining, like in a class, how that would be, and then kind of building up from there, and just wondering what the effect would be, you know, to do that.
Yeah. When you hear that story of Bill, then you wonder how it will work in classrooms, and if it is possible to divide them in little groups and have time for it also to do it, and what the effect would be on them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, teachers might say, oh, that we don't have time for that or something, we got to get the lessons done. But it seems that, you know, if you can create that listening and sort of incorporate it into the classroom culture, that it, in the long term, it's going to have a really positive effect. And someone I talked to, she said, well, you know, also at lunches, the students get together at lunch, that if they could spend that time, you know, doing empathic listening with each other, that would be sort of supportive, you know. So it's really, you know, if you have sort of this deep empathic listening on an ongoing basis in the practice, you know, how transformative. I think it could be really transformative, but I'd like to see it test. I haven't seen it, you know, kind of like tested somewhere.
Yeah.
So I'd like to see it, tested.
I'm really curious about how it even would work maybe in lunches. If the teachers say, well, we don't have time in the classroom, then why not promote it during lunchtime? Would that work? And would that be effective in whatever you would want to be effective for?
Yeah, and then the students could kind of get to the stage where they could start facilitating a circle. I think that would give them a sense of pride or competence that, oh, I facilitated a circle maybe with the lower grade or something, that they became sort of like teachers or, you know, facilitators. And so that would be like another step, you know, like in a class.
Yeah, so it could even go stepwise. So if not in the classroom, then in lunchtime, or also that kids could get so empowered in themselves and help others facilitating a circle, an empathic listening circle, and could be older kids doing that with younger kids, or.
Yeah, and I've heard of kids doing it on the playground. I mean, I've just anecdotes of it, where they just start solving their own conflicts because everybody sort of is familiar with it. And it's like with my little nephews and nieces, they're like 5 years old to 7 years old. And I've been teaching them empathic listening. And then now to the point where a fight starts, and I say, we have a conflict, what do we do? And they all say, we have an empathy circle, you know, so it's like a kind of an automatic response. So I just really would like to see that, you know, modeled, tested in more depth in a school somewhere.
Right, you really would like for children to have it in schools, and also as conflict resolution model that they can use themselves on a playground, like you see it on your nephew and niece. They already say that we have a conflict and, oh, we have a circle, so we can resolve it.
Yeah, and you've already been there since you've been doing this kind of stuff with your son and everything, so that's curious about your experience or thoughts about it. And one last piece I wanted to add was kind of that aspect what Bill was saying about the course is for people to know how they can contribute. And, you know, I'm trying to think how that could, like, you know, you and I get together on sort of a regular basis to kind of talk about it. And it seems like it's easier sort of in a small one-to-one to kind of work on specific projects. So that's the other. But then there's been sort of this aspect that in the groups, there's been two parts. Initially, I thought of like a design part and the doing part. And merging those two has been a bit difficult. It seems like just going through and doing the course like we're doing now without a lot of, you know, extra work seems to be working. And then have something separate. So kind of separate the design. And so that's something I'm trying to think about too.
Yeah, so
be effective.
Sure, what keeps you busy is also the idea that even though we mentioned it, both Bill and I, like where are we at, how are we used, you know, where are we going to? For you, it has two sides. One, indeed, working with me in a smaller group and see how we can come up with things. And then on the other side, it is the group itself that creates by doing and not having homework or anything or more to do than just show up here and do it here.
Yeah. And we're almost through. We have one more meeting, and then
and then it's done.
Then we're done with this phase. So yeah, I feel heard. Thank you.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Wow. Yeah, if I hear the word school, I jump up, of course. And the main thing for that is that going back to
who are you talking to?
Oh, who am I talking to? Peter.
All right, I'm here.
Yeah, okay, thank you. When I hear the word school, I jump up, of course, because I did so many years research and so many meetings, and figuring things out and coming up with a school where children are free. And that freedom, I think, is prerequisite to speaking your mind. And in a regular school, the mind is not even of the child, nor the body is of the child. They are dictated to sit down or to stand up or to speak or to stop speaking. And it's the same with mindfulness schools. I think, how can they do that in a regular school system? Don't they know that it's like almost contradictory?
So what I'm hearing you say is that you have a lot of years of experience and research into developing these schools that honor people's emotions and honor people's bodies and give them the space to be more choiceful. And you're almost struck in the way that it's like, well, don't they know you can't teach them about all this stuff in a regular school setting because, you know, there's the bell, there's the do this, do that, and it's almost impossible. It's impossible in that setting to really teach people.
Yeah, it speaks against each other. Like, I even had a request in the center where I work from the police department. How did they find me, right? I don't know. So to do a self-defense course, but they do that mostly in high schools, and they will teach the girls that your body is yours. And I thought, it's not. They have to sit down. They can go pee if she needs to, you know. What are you talking about? So what is the basic of of it all. The basic of it all.
You're just so struck by the fact that people come to you as the expert and say, we want to teach, say, for example, girls a self-defense course or whatever.
Yeah.
And at the core issue, you're saying, well, no, you don't. Like, you know, you have them sitting here and you're already telling them what to do. So I can't even work with this.
Yeah. On the other hand, I also understand you have to start wherever you can. So in whatever setting you can, and like I agreed upon it also because I said, well, better that it is talked about than that it is not talked about at all. So yeah.
So you'll take whatever you can get.
You
know the reality of it, like you work in.
Right. And hopefully the kids get so much empowered that they stand up and say, okay, enough is enough. This doesn't make sense. Just throw over that whole idea of sit down and shut up. Yeah. Yeah.
Really just that little bit will give them that empowerment so that they can,
maybe
really grab control of their lives in that way.
Who knows? So, yes. So Edwin, yes, go for it. Yeah. Thank you. I feel very heard, Peter.
All right. Thank you. Bill, can you hear me?
Yeah, sure.
Again, I'm really thinking, in this stuff, I really love, I'm just loving having you guys to bounce off my experiences off of, kind of like, I just really love, hearing you guys and realizing like, wow, that happened to me today kind of thing. So I'm listening to Celia and to Edwin, and I'm kind of thinking of how this relates to the work I do. And it always goes back to that, but that's where I get my experiential stimulation from in a way. So reflect that back first and then I'll get to it.
Sure. So you're seem to be really enjoying the fact that as people talk about their own personal experiences, that has a strong parallel to your own personal experiences, especially at work where the most drama takes place. And so it's the most intense and highlighted.
Yeah, that you got it.
Okay.
And I'm realizing as Celia's saying what she's saying, that today, I described before I had this really great connection with the client. And basically, I it's just making me think of how I rolled up in the car, and I see this client on the sidewalk, and the first thing she goes is, "You're going to respect me, right?" And she looks at me like that, like pointing her finger and going, "You're going to respect me, right?" And I go, "Of course." Like, yeah, hey, you want to go to lunch? It's like, yeah, but we're not going to do any of that therapy stuff. We're just going to lunch. Okay. And it was just kind of like, and just like that kind of like level of like, okay, like it just really just connecting, like saying, you know what, I'm not even here for that almost. Like, I'm just here for you, really just to be present with you. And how freeing it was. And before I was talking about kind of hitting this place where I'm really connecting with that energy, and I'm realizing how easily it flowed in, like that energy of just, I'm just here to connect, I'm not here for anything else. I'm here, and I do have my job, but at the same time, I'm just here for that wonderful connection. And just, I'm just loving that energy, I'm realizing how much I've appreciated it with you guys. That, I'm just kind of sitting here and getting that sense.
Okay. So this all came together to you, these feelings came together to you, for you in this interaction with the client today. And the first thing, she seemed to be, as you get a bit defensive, and she said, "You're going to respect me, right?" And you were pointing your finger. I don't know if she was pointing your finger. So, so she was a bit nervous. And then you said, "Let's go to lunch. Of course I'm going to respect you. That's a given." And so that was really very successful in bringing down those barriers. And then it sounds like you did go to lunch, or you just basically had unstructured time where you weren't insisting on a specific agenda. And that in turn opened her up. And so you felt that it was a very valuable exchange. And so therefore, not following necessarily the rule of the road, so to say, or the letter of the law, but really opening yourself up was the key to insight and a successful relationship with this person.
Yeah. And it's just, particularly because recently I've been doing a lot of training that kind of focuses on the inherentness of the body. And I'm realizing the moment I really got this connection, we both ordered lunch and we both got like BLTs with different toppings on it. And I said, hey, you want to trade half of mine for half of yours? And it was so cute. She says, yeah. And we kind of do one of these. We do kind of like the plate flip where we're sharing half of our sandwiches with each other. And it was just a sweet moment. And that's kind of what really, and I realized, wow, that's the moment that the juice really happened, and I'm realizing that's what he's describing in, talking across the canyons rather than, through it, like that moment of just that it is that what you had said the word. What was the word you said? I really liked it. It was I lost it, but it's something about like the intent of it that you said the word perfectly and I lost it in my head. Giving my example. But yeah, reflect back what you said and then maybe I'll catch it again.
Okay, I have to reflect back what you said.
No, reflect back what I said. Excuse me. Okay. Reflect back and
okay. You're messing me up, Peter. Calm down. Well, we were talking about that woman, and then the sweet moment of the changing of the sandwiches, which was in a way boundary dissolution. It was a very concrete example of the connection. You have your BLT with Russian dressing, and I have mine with, I don't know, sriracha. Isn't that what you young whippersnappers like? Sriracha? All right. And so you felt, and there's something else. I'm a little bit messed up here, but what I'm getting, at the crux of it, is that there's a sort of melding I feel between emotions, intellect, and just a kind of openness to the experience, where those things, sort of equilibrium, they seem to be swirling and almost defining like a new paradigm for you, or a new persona, maybe not so great, but a new source of being that's very, very rich for you.
Yeah, for me, it's like a new source that's an old source. Like it's something I used to experience a lot more. Okay. But now I think I finally got I'm finally confident enough in my brain smarts to trust my heart smarts. And it's a sweet feeling. It's a real sweet feeling, and I'm realizing that the thing that you had said that really struck me was that it was like a given almost, like it's a give, like what this guy's trying to say in this chapter is that it's a given that you're going to connect in this situation. It's not a given that you're going to argue or that it's going to be disconnecting. It's a given with your intent. And that's kind of the shift that I'm having. Like, it's a given that I'm going to succeed, or it's a given that I'm going to feel powerful in the moment, or it's a given that I'm going to feel like my life is growthful. And that's the thing that's kind of shifting for me right now.
Okay. So this feeling is a really sublime and deep confidence in that you're growing, that you're moving forward, and that you're integrating your heart and your mind.
Yeah.
And yeah, okay.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Okay.
Any more? Because I feel pretty heard. That's pretty good.
I should be, yeah. Any more? I that's you feel heard? Okay, great. Okay.
I feel heard. Thank you very much.
All right. Hey, I'm old. I'm easily confused. Let's see. Bob, would you listen to me?
I am listening.
Okay. So a couple of things. I hope that empathy always. So I have to tell you a social work joke. And first of all, what I see with Peter it reflected me. I have a dear friend, Dan McCarthy, who I worked with for 25 years. He was a social worker, worked with actually my classroom. And he always said to me, he says, you meet the client where they are. You meet them where they are. And so that's what I hear from Peter. And that's always been very wise. Okay. I'll stop there.
So you're thinking about a social worker joke, and you're mindful of Dan McCarthy, with whom you worked for 25 years, who said, meet the client where they are.
Great. Okay. Now I can get to the joke. So this is a person who's a good friend of my wife, Christine, and passed away a couple years ago. I had a chance to know him. And so he got a call, Child Protective Services call. And so he's knocking on the door, and it's a dodgy neighborhood. And, the door opens like a crack. You feel like you're at, like, Eddie Munster's house. And so, and they open it up, and they're really suspicious, and this is going to be contentious. And they said, so who is it? And they go, CPS, ma'am. We have a report. We have to investigate. And then the door opens wide, and there's a big sign. They say, oh, thank God. I thought you were the Jehovah's Witness. You can reflect the joke.
Oh, so social worker gets a CPS call, has to visit the home. Very apprehensive about this confrontation. Goes to the door, knocks on the door opens a little bit, says, ma'am, this is CPS, I'm here to investigate. Sigh of relief, open the door, thank God, I thought you were Jehovah's Witnesses.
Yeah. So, there's a lot of meat here. In what we're trying to describe. I remember a writing. I was part of a writing group, and we tried to write what we call the ineffable. The ineffable, or as I interpret it here, the undefined, or the not quite definable. And I feel right now that words are failing me, but I'm getting a sense of something coalescing.
So in the dictionary, there is the word ineffable. There is the word undefined, undefinable. And it sounds as if you are living the truth of that without having to define it.
You're trying to. The mind always says, wait a minute, what are you doing? So it does. So you have to have a sense of humor. Okay. Thank you, Bob. I feel heard.
Okay. Edwin, would you please listen to me?
Sure.
While on vacation, I read the Upanishads and the Bhagavad Gita. And Dr. Miller is trying to make explicit the unity and the wholeness that can be experienced by listening, as it is described in the Upanishads and the Bhagavad Gita. And so I think we are, yeah.
Oh, so you'd read, I was afraid I was going to forget the words of the Upanishad and the Bhagavad Gita. So you read those, and that they talk about a unity, and you feel that what Miller is talking about is sort of how to get to that sense of unity.
Amen. Yes. And this wonderful group that we're a part of, I hope to high heaven that we start geometrically expanding and spread this wonderful human relationship possibility that is empathy.
So you're hoping that we can spread what we're doing here, this empathic way of being and what you've read in the book, and really hoping that we can kind of get this out more, spread it.
Yes, yes, yes. I feel fully heard.
There's not more?
Well, once you dive into that unity, you have everything. There is nothing more that you can have.
So once you get into that sense of unity, it's sort of complete. There's not more that you really need, like just that. That's kind of like all you need. All you need is unity.
All you need is empathy.
All you need is empathy.
I feel heard. Thank you.
Okay, you sure? Is there not more?
Well, to be able to encompass and apprehend the wholeness of all that is, and to be very much a part of all that as one individual in it is a tremendous, tremendous experience.
So there's a felt quality of seeing the wholeness of life and also being part of the wholeness. And so that's, you're finding that a wonderful feeling to have.
Quite so, quite so. Feel fully heard.
Okay. Okay, then I'll speak to Peter. You would?
All right, I unmuted myself.
Okay. I was just noticing how Bob speaks, and he always he says a little bit, and he says, "I feel fully heard," and then I asked 3 times, "Is there more?" And each time he had more. So I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, just noticing his speech pattern and how, as you just go a little bit deeper and deeper, there's all these nuggets of knowledge and experience that come out.
Yeah, and it's with that question: "Is there more?" So that's a real good. So just noticing that and sort of chuckling about it, or just noticing that sort of dynamic and actually sort of enjoying it too, sort of enjoying
really
it. So
holding Bob with a lot of joy, just for his presence and just for what he offers.
Yeah, and let's see what else. Let's see. Okay, so let's see. I'm trying to think of what else is it. My mind is scanning. There's a couple, kind of 2 directions that I find going. One is this whole aspect of this chapter is about conflict, and it's conflict. So this conflict resolution that we're doing a lot in the tent, or really trying to do with the empathy teams in terms of, sort of mediating the left and the right conflict that's going on. So this is, I just see this as, totally relevant to that, and that there's a sort of a formula almost for it. Is it, fully hear the different sides, find the feelings, the shared feelings or shared needs or shared values. And once you sort of find those, build on that, and then sort of ask, what would you like to request? What would you like to offer to, address this solution? And then people start talking about what to do next and start negotiating. So there's kind of a core aspect to how you do the mediation, and it kind of starts with that listening and finding those core needs. We'll use different terms, needs or values or feelings that we would desire is what I'm kind of trying to get used. And then so just kind of getting more clear and thinking about that sort of that basic human dynamic. I think it's just like this core human dynamic of how people sort of just work.
Yeah, so you're just noticing. So you were saying that you noticed 2 things, and one of them is this core dynamic, this aspect of how the empathy tent process seems to go a lot of the time, which is that you get 2 people together, you get to hear their feelings or needs or values, you get them to reach some level of mutuality, and then you get the healing, which is usually comes in the form of a request or some kind of shift that they carry forward in their life.
Yeah, he calls it negotiate, right? You kind of negotiate. And even within the negotiation is an empathic process, right? It's like, well, I would like this. And the other person says, well, I don't quite go with this, but how about that? So again, the empathic, it's not just hearing each other to begin with, but the actual negotiation is a highly empathic sort of a process as well, of really listening to each other and then, you know, trying to find sort of solutions going forward. So the empathy I see is that openness, that sensitivity is important through the whole, through the whole process.
Yeah. So you're just you're getting that sense of, even in that negotiation piece, there's that loving and caring that really connects people and creates that healing, and you're just kind of noticing that it's there.
Yeah, that it's needed. It's not, some people say, oh, you need empathy to start with, and then, you know, then you kind of forget about it. But actually, you need it through the whole process of any kind of a mediation. It's kind of from start to finish. It's the whole conflict itself at its core is, it seems to me to be an empathy issue.
Yeah, and you're noticing that people like to say that, well, you need empathy to kind of do this, but there's something about it being kind of in the background of the whole process that you're getting curious about, and that it's there, and that maybe you're noticing how it comes out at certain points, like it's drawn or inspired out at certain aspects of it.
Not so much that it's drawn out. Oh, yeah, it's drawn out in that it's used with the conflict for hearing everyone, how they're feeling in the moment, how they're feeling around whatever the conflict was, and then hearing how they would like to negotiate moving forward. So there's sort of different phases, and empathy is like a component of each of those phases.
It's kind of like in the background at all times, no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of that essence.
Yeah, and then what's coming to mind is this picture of the polarization that when we go to these demonstrations, I used to think that the political left was kind of more empathic, you know, valuing empathy here, but I'm not so sure. It seems that they're just like polar, the left and the right are just sort of just mirror images of each other. And it just seems like such a challenge, like how to kind of shift that dynamic, because it's so polarized, and there's so few people actually get out there and do what we're doing, is to kind of to speak from, well, somebody's got to listen first. You know, empathy is important. This is how we solve the problem. It's like everybody's going into us versus them. I mean, the left, the right. I mean, it's like, it seems like it's 99%, you know, polarization. There's these few little crazy, you know, empathy folks trying to, you know, do something about this. And so I'm just kind of noticing, at least that's kind of the image that's kind of coming to mind.
You're noticing how, you know, over time, you're you know, at first you had this feeling, this sense that maybe the left was more compassionate or empathetic.
Yeah.
Now your worldview is just widening so much through experience.
Yeah.
Through real life being there and being in the middle of that Antifa brawl, you know, that you get to see how, like, both sides are kind of mirroring each other in their lack of empathetic listening and their lack of capability to be present for each other.
Yeah, and this is such a tough job. I'm just kind of sitting with the enormity of the task somehow. So that's kind of, but anyway, it's nice that the book kind of addresses it, because I think he has the same concern. I think that's why, you know, Bill Miller wrote the book, because he's concerned about what's happening in the country and his polarization. My sense is this is sort of his contribution towards that, you know, finding routes out. And, you know, how do we really spread this to the level that, you know, people really accept it? And I just think that the existing ways, you know, workshops and whatnot, isn't enough. You know, it's like they're just like little drops, that we need something, you know, some bigger political, like an Occupy empathy, or, you know, something where we're just taking a real kind of a stand here somehow. So I'm just kind of sitting with that kind of
Well, you're
brainstorming.
sitting with the enormity of it.
Mm-hmm.
With the enormity, and you really get a sense of it when you get to this little oasis, which is this aspect of this book. You know, there's one chapter in the book kind of really connects you with how much that's needed.
Yeah.
You wrote about it, but from your own lived experience, you just have this. It's like you're in the raft in the ocean of all these 99% of people don't believe in connecting, and you do.
Yeah. It's surprising, even, sort of, I don't know what to call them, middle class, progressives, who they just, you think that they just, I don't know, it's like even, I mean, it's so deep, that us versus them is just so deep through the culture. I guess I'm just kind of sitting with sort of the enormity of that energy. Yeah. Even though within each of those people, you can see they've got both of those energies, right? The us versus them, but they also see the humanity. And so maybe it's just a matter of how do we speak to that other part? Somebody's got to kind of bang the drum for it. So yeah, anyway, yeah.
But it sounds like you're really just sitting with that enormity,
Mm-hmm.
that it's that the human's so intelligent, but groups of humans are not, in that way. Like, you can see that beauty in that one person where you can spend that hour and really sit and connect. And at the same time, you see all these other things, which really you're curious, like, oh, where's this coming from? Like, what, like, how did this big thing just show up here where these people are so disconnected and they're so just not connecting and not doing what you think would suit everyone better?
Yeah, that's it. Thank you, Bill Hurd.
Thank you. Celia, can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. Edwin is bringing me back to the moment that I realized that I was that I wasn't liberal, almost like that. The moment that I realized, and I remember very specifically being at an NVC conference when I was in college, and my mentor was really gracious and really cared for me a lot and sent me there. And I remember the whole crowd of NVC people balking at disgust at George W. Bush. And me sitting there going, but he's the president. Like, I just like, it's kind of making me go back to that time of like, yeah, I don't agree with the stuff he's doing, but there's a human here. We can't just like start throwing knives at the human tied to the post. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it was just striking to me, like when I realized, like, wow, I disagree with something that's happening here. And I realized that at the same time, I'm kind of connecting with a lot of times where I've seen conservative people do something, and I kind of agree, but I kind of don't. And I'm just kind of sitting in like that space that is the independent almost. Like I'm sitting in that place that is not of any group and really wanting just to be seen for how complex things are. Like really, really, really complex.
Wow. So what Edwin said triggered for you actually a very basic feeling in where are you standing? What is the complexity of everything, and like bringing you back to situations in college, even when you were at NVC and people were against Bush, and you thought, but he's the president, and how can you do that? And seeing that deeper value of it actually from why people don't see that? Is that what you said?
Yeah. Now I'm kind of I'm thinking of, when Edwin describes how much work needs to be done with this.
Right.
It makes me think of, I think it's one of the first things I actually talked with you guys about when we first started. It brings me back to that place of, I had a coworker, and his favorite saying was when someone would someone would would try to tell him what he was doing, he'd go amateur hour. Like he would say, and I get this sense of like, I look at all these people and I go, wow, it's amateur hour. And it is, you know, you see all this stuff on TV, and you see these people beating the crap out of each other, and you see these people doing all this stuff. It's like, wow, it's like, oh my God, like they couldn't sit and talk for 2 minutes. Like, why didn't you go to a party or something instead of going and beating the crap out of someone? Is that the new party? Is that the new Friday night hangout to go and throw and bear mace someone?
Yeah.
Like, really?
Like really, it brings you sometimes in shock. Like, how can it be? Like, why don't they see what they're doing and beating the crap out of each other instead of listening to each other? Can't they see it? Can they just not know what they're doing? And you feel like it more from the outside, that you like you are the only one who sees through it or something, and all the work that still needs to be done with all these groups that don't get it.
I realize as I reflect on it, it feels very lonely, but I'm not lonely, and you guys have shown me that like it's not a lonely endeavor. But wow, connecting with that, I realize how lonely the other people must be. I mean, we have a mental health epidemic of loneliness, really, all over the world, all these different governments, even in the US, everyone agrees on one thing. There's an epidemic of loneliness. Wow. And how epically lonely you must be to get yourself riled up so much, to join a bunch of people you don't know, to beat up a bunch of other people you don't know. Yeah. Because you're lonely. It really, that must be the solution. You're lonely and you have to connect. There's some way you have to force this connection. And a lot of media, a lot of news, a lot of talk radio are lonely people looking to connect. And how it's like it's something that's just there, you know?
Right, and that you almost got that insight, like, well, that must be the bottom line. Actually, everybody is lonely. And everybody is fighting for connection. That's the way they do it. And wow, it's really loneliness that it comes down to. And we are actually fighting for connection. And that's the way we know how to do it.
By you know,
attacking and
reinforcing our love for each other by pushing away someone else. And that's not how it works. That's very inherently disconnecting. It's like they're doing all this work for no reason, you know?
Yeah, and you see actually that's the opposite. It's disconnecting, and it does not work that way. Yeah. Yeah. Anything else that I missed?
No, you were perfect. Just I'm kind of sitting with that.
Yeah.
Thank you. I feel heard.
Okay, great. Wow, it brings, to whom I speaking? Bill, you want to speak, listen to me? Thank you. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. It all brings me back, and also what Bob said to, I wrote down at the end, because I thought, okay, maybe Edwin wants me to do a try it exercise. And I thought of, what is our gain? What is our gain if we empathically listen? So he comes up with that. What's in it for you? Actually, you know, why you're doing it, and he writes all the time about understanding, but I think it is deeper, and I think it comes down to that wholeness feeling that Bob talks about. The connection, not being lonely, what Peter speaks about. So it is deeper than understanding. It is deeper. I think the empathy that Bill mentioned and Edwin mentioned is by itself the thing that we are after. And that feeling of that we are one, actually, that we have a shared humanity, and we want to express that.
Okay. And I believe you said gain, G-A-I-N, not game, G-A-M-E, right? Okay.
G-A-I-N, yes.
Okay, good. I just want to make sure. Okay. Essentially, you were contemplating what, Edwin, we're all talking about, is that what do people get out of practicing empathy? And then one thing is understanding, but you felt that it's deeper than that. It's more profound. And again, it's working on levels. And again, if we get back to what we were talking about before, I would just say almost undefinable, because better than that, it bridges boundaries. It's an understanding that is very expansive.
It's our human. It's our humanity. What I like that expression. It's to understand our common humanity. I learned that expression from Edwin,
right.
And I like that very much. And I like the wholeness idea that Bob brings up. I like the we are screaming for relation, for relating, like Peter said, and so all come together. And how I also came up with it is in my own class last Tuesday. I was enticed to talk about a situation in where I did the mediation. So it was a bit, my neighbors, I heard screaming and yelling and whatever, but then I also heard kids screaming and crying. And when kids are involved, Celia is there. So I knock on the door, and what I help the people do in the to mediate is, the first question is, can I help? You have to have the green light to help. You cannot just jump in and say, hey, you there, So I stopped there.
Okay. So the word I was trying to think, so you really like the human community, the sense of the human understanding. But more than that, I get a sense of almost a metaphysical, because you also brought in Bob's understanding.
Yeah.
That it's not just, okay, I understand what makes this person go or this person's tick, but it's more of a process that leads to greater and greater understanding.
Yes.
And so it's a dynamic thing. And then you were describing a situation where that came out, and that you heard, arguing, and then you heard kids. And then once you heard kids, your maternal instincts were triggered. And you went and you knocked on the door. Thank God you weren't a Jehovah's Witness. And the sense I got is that you said, would you like some mediation or some help?
No, I straight away screamed it, because they were screaming, the kids were screaming, so I had to scream it. Can I help?
Oh, okay.
Can I help? Yeah.
So then you said, can I help? And you screamed it out.
Yeah.
Okay.
And because of that, the energies that they geared towards each other were geared towards me. And I know that is how it works. Mm-hmm. So when you offer that, you readdress that energy. So you have to be careful and aware also. Now they're my good neighbors, so I knew them. So that is good. So what happened was that the mother who lives there had a real upset with her daughter-in-law, so much that they both wanted to kill each other. And the daughter-in-law wanted to grab the kids, and had her coat on already, had put the coats on the kids, and wanted to leave the house. It was icy roads, it was dark, she had no place to go, and she wanted to leave. And at that second, I realized my own agenda. That was for the first time that I so clearly realized that when you do empathy, you have an agenda too. And my agenda was to keep the kids safe, to not let those kids leave the house. That was my thing. So in the split second, I felt that energy. I thought I would do my utmost. I will do my anything to keep them here and safe.
Mm-hmm. You were, first of all, you came in and you took focus by being loud,
Yeah.
and you realized that when you do that, then the focus and some of that angry energy then is focused
Yeah.
toward you,
Yeah.
and you're prepared to do that. You're prepared
Yeah.
to kind of take that on. At the same time, you also realize that, we talk about empathy and we almost talk about becoming transparent.
Right.
But on the other hand, no, kids are involved. Sorry.
Yeah.
You have some rooting interest here. And they'll be held to pay if those kids, venture out on those icy roads. That is not really reflecting what you.
No. You are in the humor section today.
But actually, what I should reflect in the sense is that you took that chance, and also for people around, because you had a relationship.
Yes.
So you had a certain amount of assurance that even though you were acting in this unexpected way, you were a known quantity.
Yes.
And so there should be a range of things. They weren't going to think that you're coming to steal from them or
right.
Like that.
And I knew that they liked me. So I was not a real stranger or whatever.
Right.
And I loved them both. I loved the mother and the daughter-in-law, but they wanted to kill each other at that time. So how I to make that short, I empathically listened to one. Then I asked the mother to sit in her bedroom. I said, "I'm coming to you in 5 minutes. I do first your daughter-in-law." So the husband was also there, but he was happy that I was there. The baby jumped in my arms, so I had the 2-year-old. The 10-year-old was standing next to me, and I was reflecting back to the young mother, and really strong. So not like gently, like, oh, you want this or this or that. No, really. So you want to kill her. So you want to, so really giving her the percentage back, even in nonverbal thing.
Right.
Yeah.
So you were listening. You started. The kids found solace in your presence.
Yeah.
And you asked the mother to wait in her room, and then you talked to the daughter-in-law, and then you were specifically really focusing on, when you said she wanted to kill her, you really didn't say, "Oh, you want to kill her." You really, gave it the emotional intensity as a way. Yes.
The congruence there. Really, the same package that she showed, I gave her back.
Right.
And, yeah. And then I said, "Okay, sit here. I'll go to mom, and I'll be back." Okay, 5 minutes, did that, and I did that like 4 times, up and down between them. And meanwhile, I was 5 minutes with the other person. This person was building it up again, So but I still got them to the place that she took off her coat and she stayed. So to make it short, is actually what I was going to say. What is my gain? Why am I doing this? The question of Edwin, what does this help you? And why is empathy so important in my life? And for whom am I doing it? And so all these questions came, and then by me telling my own memory to my class, I realized I had an agenda there. I had an agenda. Yeah. And I wonder now for the next times, what kind of agenda can I grab and will be my motivation to do it.
Okay. So you continued with the mediation. 4 times back and forth.
Yeah.
And each time you had to then tamp out a fire that was building for the 5 minutes before.
Yeah.
But you were able to get people settled down to a much where the daughter-in-law took her jacket off, and that the kids, you know, she was going to stay there and she wouldn't put the kids at risk. Yeah. And then when we were telling it to your class, you realized your agenda, which is because you've always, you know, in the past of reflecting other things you've said, you talk about transparency and kind of losing. Yeah. And so that has, you know, created some new creative tension within you. To say, well, wait a minute, you know, what is this? You know, I don't sense any regret that the kids are safe at home, and you came with an agenda. Yet, I think that, you know, you're kind of finding your spot for that.
Well, it is not so that I regret it. It's more like, wow, I'm curious. I found the motor. What is your motor to do it? And your motivation to do the empathic listening, like. Edwin said at one time, you know, between the left and the right, and he had actually the agenda of creating a culture of empathy. So he had the third agenda. So the left has their agenda, the right has their agenda, and then he has the agenda of creating a culture of empathy. But underneath, like for every one of us, why would you do it? What is your motor to do it? Okay. So, open question.
Right. So the question is also, it's like, it's one thing to understand intellectually empathy, or even to practice it in a structured setting. But this spontaneous situation really came you to look at, wait a minute, what's the motor? What's the motivation for doing empathy? And that is an individual path. Although I would assume,
I think so, but on the other hand, I think comes down to the empathy quality itself. It is in itself what we would want, I think.
Okay, so right, so the practicing of empathy is an end in itself.
Yes,
and it gives you the kind of experience that leads to fulfillment.
Yeah, but I'm still thinking of, wow, there is then still another motor, because that we are like activist. Like, even though I never called myself an activist, if I hear kids and I jump up, then I'm kind of an activist too, you know. So being an activist, what is the motivation?
So, yes. So even though you don't think of yourself as an activist, you realized in that moment that indeed you are. If there are certain issues at hand, you're an activist. Yeah. And so therefore, again, that brings back, and it seems to be, again, how you're considering how to integrate this new experience or this experience into your overall.
Thank you. I feel heard. Thank you, Bill.
Oh. My pleasure.
Go on forever.
It's good.
Don't ask me if there's more.
We haven't been doing time limits. It's kind of like we're throwing out time limits now.
Yeah. All right. But no, that was great. And I really, okay, well, let's see. I'll talk to Peter.
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, great. So I really enjoyed Celia's, you know, long talk, because it really kept me focusing on listening and getting it. And so it was like, I enjoyed it. It was a challenge, and it was enjoyable.
So you really enjoyed the challenge and the practice that Celia just gave you.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That was like, I have to, agree about, again, what I think is the seminal power of the empathic listening. It's sort of like, I feel the same way about kids. I would be, I try to be, flexible and things like that. But when it came to kids, then when it came from safety, there was no negotiation if I really felt, I felt that. And then one of the things that helped me depersonalize, because again, I was in a very intense situation where kids were kicking and spitting and biting and saying the worst, taking like your worst physical feature and expanding on it all of a sudden. And I realized that I always say love is like heat is, or cold is the absence of heat, and hate is the absence of love.
Mm.
And so therefore you don't fight against hate, you bring in more love.
Mm.
Like Desmond Morris, this guy who I kind of like, was popularized, wrote The Naked Ape. And that book basically said that, and again, this is a popularization. This guy's a pretty good scientist, I think. But the popularization is there's a thin veneer of civilization, and you peel that away, the minute, then there's this savage.
Mm.
And my feeling is that when I really learned more about evolution, is that first of all, for 3 of our 4 million years before humans, we were not the top predator. Even when we were hominids, we were not the top predator. And the only security we had was each other. So, 2 against the lion is better than 1 against the lion. And, and that even with that, with the warring tribes and stuff like that, I realized that everybody who grew up in there, it's like everything you had was made by somebody else, or you needed something from somebody else, or somebody had to hunt and kill something. Even if you were like, killing and eating the village next door, if you were cannibals, the worst thing, you still had that deep connection in these tribal, and that's been taken away from us. And it's the result of so much anger.
Yeah. So when you were listening to Celia kind of talk about people having these intents that come with what they're trying to do, they have objectives, almost in a sense. You're it kind of brings up this thought process and how, like, people are they still have objectives aren't inherently a bad thing. Like when you want to protect kids, not many people will object to that objective, right? They won't say, well, okay, well, no, you can't do that. And it's leading to this thought of like how interdependent people are. Like if the objective is to connect with and survive with a group or with ourselves, because it's biologically expedient, then that's how we're built. That's our DNA.
Yeah.
Did I hear you right?
Yeah, no, that was really well done. And much, I know I'm supposed to judge, but much more sparse and to the point than when I said it. So essentially, I mean, I did a report on various therapies for autistic kids. And there's the NAS, I forgot what the acronym represents, like, but essentially they did a list of these different therapies, and the range of therapies ranged from like a client-centered therapy to more of a milieu therapy, where the client is brought into a milieu therapy, and they were rating the effectiveness. And then they also try to mix what we know about behavioral theory, which is you can make, if you have a positive, negative reward system, you can make changes in a person, but they tend to fade over time. So what we're trying to do is to make changes, but also to include rewarding things so that the desired behavior is actually giving them something that's desired, so they repeat it. And I think that's the essence of what empathic listening does. It gives you an example of fellow human beings in a very deep, way that, and it just gives you benefits, So that's a lot.
You have this sense, through all this knowledge you have and the things you've seen, that when people feel it, and they see the benefits, that they're going to be drawn towards this empathic communication, that it's actually what people are built for. Mm-hmm. And you're seeing how anger and all these other things in the world have pulled us away from that. And it's something that you want to create a shift in.
Yes. And I think that if we just keep on tapping at the door, sometime we're going to get in. Mm.
Yeah. So you're hopeful. You're ready to keep knocking on that door, just waiting for someone to open it.
Thank you. Thank you, Peter.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Just like, I'm just kind of sitting with like how all these multiple connections from all these directions are really leading me to think. Because when Celia is saying, how can I help? I imagine Edwin embodying that in the empathy tent, So Edwin, I'll speak to you.
Okay.
Thank you.
So you're kind of seeing that when Celia, you're kind of trying to tie everything together, what you're hearing here. And when Celia is going to these neighbors and saying, how can I help? You're seeing an analogy there to what we're doing in the empathy tent. Like sort of like, how can we help? And we're trying to do something similar.
We had spoken to the point a long time ago, actually, a few months ago, about how do we make it more, how do we make it go viral in a sense? Like, how do we make it go like that? And Celia made her intent go viral by matching the energy being put out by her neighbors. She already had a relationship, and she was able to take that spaciousness of the relationship, and it became a viral thing. She was able to tamp down the energy by meeting them where they were at, and then creating that. And I'm curious how we do that. How do we create a presence? Because we see, particularly on the right, we see these professionals match the energy of what's going on, and artistically and beautifully. You see Donald Trump, he is a master of meeting people at their energy level and then pumping it up to the point where no one could even touch him. He's like in orbit. How do we do that? How do we get people and catch that energy but do it in the terms of empathy? How do we go into that? And I see that, Edwin, as you trying to do that with the empathy tent. But I'm curious, is there another way? Is there another way that we can match their energy of their intensity and then really connect, like really, really, really like say, and guess what? There's this third option. And Celia made me realize it. Like, that it's beautiful because she did the perfect intervention. If I was a therapist and I've done something similar, I walk into a family pretty much beating the crap out of each other. I show up and I go, whoa, what's up? And then you slowly notch it down. How do we do that? Because, the very practice of being empathetic, it's so important. So how do we meet people with empathy at their level, and then maybe because our intent is to calm people down and bring them back from the edge, is slow it down so that people can be heard and seen.
Okay, so you're really wondering and sort of building on what Celia mentioned about meeting this family at their energy level, and that seeing like in society with these conflicts that are happening and with us trying to promote the culture of empathy, how do we meet the society or the culture at its energy level and connect with them at their level, and then bring in the empathy and change the energy level and bring it into more of this empathic space. But you're just like sitting and wondering, or it's like, looking for how to move forward and wondering like how to match the energy. There's something there in that matching of the energy level, and just kind of looking for creative ideas and solutions for, what's going to pop up to address that.
I mean, I just reveling. You're really making me just think of my own lived experience of being someone that really loves the internet and loves watching all these people, and the wackier the better, like just the wacky, the wackier the meme. I don't care if a leftist made it. I don't care if a conservative made it. And by the way, the left can't meme. The left cannot meme. The left cannot make jokes online. They just suck at it. because they can't match the energy of the right. It's just the truth. Left can't meme. And so how can we meme? Because I don't want to be involved in the left if they're trying to meme. But how can we meme? You know, how can we create that energy that matches where people really want to be? You know, because that's where the willingness will come from. That's where the significance is. That's how we honor people in a very core way in their bodies of, this is the truth for you, and let's talk about it. I want to know what your real truth is. And I don't know. I'm just sitting, I don't know how to do it. I wish someone had a class on it. Like
yeah, it's like you kind of see, you see the dynamics out there, and you're not like, you're just kind of searching for ways of sort of matching the energy, and you see that there's something about this doing wacky, crazy, just totally out there kind of memes is some way that kind of captures energy or kind of matches the energy. And that Trump is actually pretty good of a master of matching people's energy in terms of maybe a criticism or a put down. He'll match your energy and then up it to the nth degree. And then you're seeing that the conservatives are actually pretty good at just generating these memes, and that the liberals are just not very good at creating these memes. And so you don't want to kind of go the liberal route, but it's like, as an empathy movement, you know, we can create our own memes and our own way of approaching and matching the energy. And so you're just kind of looking for ideas. Like,
just for transparency, when I say meme, I mean it more as the traditional idea of that thought that replicates itself, rather than, you know, a flashing picture with a line of witty remark. You know, I literally mean like the definition of meme, as in, how do we do something that's so connecting that it replicates so much? And the empathy tent is one good example. That's definitely on its way to move that higher level of energy, and more replication. I just don't know. I don't know what the next step is.
Yeah.
Like, even for me, I'm inspired to do something, but I don't know what matches what I'm wanting to do. You know,
there's something in you that wants to take it to the next level, but it doesn't know like where to go, what to do. And you want to be clear that the meme is about kind of capturing that energy, and that energy that can sort of be reproduced and kind of go viral in a sense, and kind of shift the field of energy, so to speak. And it's like you kind of have some ideas, some insights, and it's just waiting for that insight to pop up that comes to mind.
Well, in talking to you about it, I'm really, again, it's mixing in all this stuff I've been talking about today. Like, I'm just having this shift. I'm kind of returning back to that, loving that sense of compassion and that sense of warmth that I've had in the past. And at the same time, I'm so excited. Like, in a week, I start a brand new 2-year, you know, postgraduate training. And it's like, oh, wow. And they do really deep, like, emotional work, you know, and just kind of just wanting to honor the fact that it is, that, you know, where I'm going. Like, I'm doing work, and maybe I'll make that my goal. Kind of like, so what is my next step? What is my next higher vibration almost?
So the work that you're going to be doing is be going into sort of a compassionate space and be working in that space, and you're looking at like kind of keeping that awareness of, what's the next level? That you're going into, and sort of looking for that new energy in that new space to go into. And just kind of hold that,
And I'm sorry that you're not feeling up to it because you're sleepy, but I just feel such high energy thinking about it. Like, I really feel like explosive, like a volcano almost.
You're really feeling energetic, like you're feeling explosive. You got all this energy, and you just want to really go for it. You're just feeling excited about this and really want to go for it.
Thank you for matching me. Thank you very much.
Well, that was fun for me too. Thanks for that. We're coming at the top of the hour, but Bob hasn't had much of a chance. Do you want to take the next turn just to check in?
I'm glad I'm back, and I am inspired to do more in the local area here. and it's 5 o'clock, and I need to say goodbye till next time.
Okay, it's 5 o'clock. You're glad to be back, and it's goodbye until next time. So you'll be here next week?
Yeah.
Okay, great. It was great to see you again. So.
Yeah.
Okay, do you have a motion? What's your motion, your goodbye motion? Okay. Let's see. So, okay, well, let's just, in winding down that energy, yeah, I'm really learning something about the state matching, you know, because in those demonstrations, the state matching is, and it's come up in other places, so it's sort of a real edge for me, too. Yeah, well, should we go around just in closing? What's a felt experience? And this is always my, like, kind of questioning, churning, questioning, churning. Yeah, let's get it kind of going, kind of a little bit, kind of a crazy, swirling, churning. Yeah, that's it. Okay, got it. Celia, do you want to go?
Thrilled, just thrilled. Yeah, I feel great.
Bill? You're muted, but we get the energy level.
Juggling a lot of balls.
Oh, juggling. Okay, that's different.
I did not know it was milking the cow, but
milking the cow. Okay.
Whatever.
That's the Dutch for you. So.
I'm not going to be around next week because I'm actually going to be at this training. So
okay.
We're meeting the week after, right? Or
right.
No?
We will.
Okay.
And your motion?
Edwin, do you want to ask everybody if we're going to continue?
We have one more meeting, but we do want to continue after that to do a redesigned motion. We can talk about it next time. But
okay, great.
What's your motion, Peter?
Kind of like a head exploding, which is actually a good meme online.
Mind blown.
That's a good meme, a video of all of our heads and then suddenly they all blow up. It's like...
All right, thank you very much, guys.
Okay.
Blow your mind with empathy.
Blow the candle out too.
Oh yeah.
Yes,
Oh,
blow the
shit.
candle.
Got a whole fire going here. Shit.
Thank you, Peter.
Blow it out quick.
Oh my goodness.
Oh boy.
Oh my, just
I just saved your house from
You did. Okay.
Take care.
I wasn't even noticing it.
That's some hot empathy right there, man.
That's hot empathy with blowing our mind.
The energy bag.
All right, I'll see you in 2 weeks.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye-bye.